Hello, everybody, and welcome into Commodity Culture, where we break down commodities markets, sound money principles, and geopolitics, all with the goal of making you a better investor in the commodities sector. My name is Jesse Day. Today is December 29th, 2025, and I'm thrilled to welcome Martin Armstrong to the program, an economic forecaster who has been called on by governments around the world in times of crisis, including the Reagan administration, Margaret Thatcher, and others. Martin lays out why he thinks we will be entering a panic cycle in 2026, the culmination of failed economic policies, out-of-touch political leaders, and a ramp-up in war that could create immense destruction. Martin also breaks down how precious metals will play a role in all of this, and you're going to want to stick around to the end where Martin lays out how and why he thinks the EU could implement capital controls not only on fiat currency, but on gold, silver, and Bitcoin as well. And speaking of silver, if you love silver, pick up your Commodity Culture Stack Silver, Not Fiat t-shirt in the Commodity Culture shop. Link is in the description below. And now strap yourselves in for my conversation with Martin Armstrong. Martin Armstrong, it is great to have you back on Commodity Culture. You just posted an article today, December 29th, on Armstrong Economics on Zelensky potentially committing war crimes in the Russia-Ukraine conflict. I want to read a quote from you here. You said, Zelensky is a war criminal based on the rules of war and Geneva. Whether the car bomb is perfidious depends entirely on the method used to get the bomb to the target. Perfidy, treachery, is strictly prohibited under Article 37 of the Geneva Convention's Additional Protocol 1. So talk to us about that. And of course, we've recently heard news that one of Putin's residences has been attacked by drones, many believing that Ukraine is behind it. They are denying it at this point in time, but there was also a previous attack on a helicopter, or an attempted attack by drones on a helicopter transporting Putin. Break this all down for us and what it means for the conflict.
You know, it's you can't assassinate people covertly. All right. In war, I mean, that's kind of like raising a white flag. Oh, I surrender. And then the guy comes over and then you shoot him. All right. That's what Article 37 is about. He has to know that there's a confrontation. All right. And what they've been doing is putting in car bombs. They killed one general with a bomb in his scooter. That's a war crime. Simple as that. It's against everything in the Geneva Conventions. And, you know, he claims that, oh, well, we're doing that to retaliate against their war crimes. So one war crime justifies another. I mean, this is just getting out of hand. I mean, you know, as you know, I mean, Ukraine is really the fatherland of ethnic cleansing. I mean, they were protected by the CIA only because, you know, they were killing Jews and Poles, but because they were also killing Russians, no Ukrainian Nazi was ever put on trial at Nuremberg. They were protected. And that's why we have this war today. They protected them because they know their hatred of Russians is basically equivalent of Iran versus Israel. You know, it's just some sort of ethnic hatred that is not like, all right, let's compromise, shake hands. That's never going to happen. So, you know, I honestly, I can't believe they're this stupid. And by that, I mean that the frustration with NATO, etc., is that Putin has been very restrained. He understands that attacking anything in NATO, and that's World War III. So honestly trying to take out Putin, and I believe this is the third time. They tried once at a rally, missed them. Then they sent drones after his helicopter. That was the second attempt. And this one, I mean, it's just within their character. And you remove Putin. And honestly, I think this is what NATO wants, in the sense that then they'll get a hardliner on the Russian side who will act emotionally. So, I mean, what I was told from Ukrainian military, initially they were told just to go to the border with Russia. Then at the last minute, they were told to invade the Kursk region. And I was told that order came from MI6. So they thought, okay, fine, he's not responding. So let's invade Russia, and that will get him to do something. So, I mean, each step has been them trying to get Putin to respond emotionally. And, you know, they haven't been able to do that. So, honestly, I cannot believe that they're that stupid to attack Putin and think that what, the war is going to end or something. I mean, that's absurd. I mean, it's like, you know, if you attack the White House, do you really think the U.S. would say, oh, okay, fine, you win, we're over? You know, it's not, you know, things don't work that way. So that's why I say I can't believe they're that stupid. I think this is deliberate to try and get rid of Putin, to get somebody there who is going to respond emotionally and say, all right, I'm pushing the button or something, you know?
And then the goal then would be to drag NATO into the conflict, because as we know right now, Ukraine standing on its own without foreign aid is not able to compete with Russia on the battlefield. By all accounts, they're not even able to with Western backing. So do you think Zelensky, in this type of scheme to assassinate Putin, potentially get somebody else in there who's more of a hawk, and then that person do something potentially irrational, attacking NATO, or something that could be perceived as such, would then cause NATO to put boots on the ground and enter the conflict directly? Do you think that's their mindset?
Yeah, look, Zelensky is simply a puppet of NATO. I mean, I speak to Ukrainians, and honestly, they said if he was on fire, they wouldn't urinate on him until he was dead. I think his polls are down to like the 23% or something like that. I had even been gotten a request after there was a brawl in their parliament over there. Would I come to Ukraine? I said, no, sorry, not going. But, you know, the cries, even in parliament now, for calling for an election is showing that he's losing support. Ukrainian people should be allowed to vote themselves. He takes his orders from, you know, from basically from Paris, London, and NATO. That's it. And he's just lining his pockets. I mean, his top aide got caught stealing 100 million. And I mean, he could never even spend that much in a lifetime. I mean, it's just absurd. But there's no way that Zelensky could ever step down and still live in Ukraine. They will kill him. I mean, he has dragged people off the street, sent them to the front lines. You know, there's even documentation of drone. I mean, of, you know, everything that he's done. You know, people even with Down syndrome he's sent out. So, I mean, he's not very popular among the Ukrainian people, and which is why he won't do an election, because if he does, he's going to lose. And then what? And I can't believe that the EU leaders, they're either getting kickbacks on the side, or they just need this war so desperate that all the documentation that's come out about the fraud. I mean, I even had info I sent off to Congress. Zelensky was sending out $50 million per month to an account in UAE. And I gave them the documentation. They were like, what the hell's going on here? But everybody turns a blind eye. Why? How much are they getting back on the side? Something's going on here. I mean, even the IMF held up payments because of their corruption. I mean, so I don't know. I mean, obviously something, I think, behind the curtain, and just looking at things historically, they got to have their fingers in the pie. They have to. I mean, you got Ursula won't even release her emails with Pfizer.
The sponsor of today's episode is ARC Silver Gold Osmium. Owner Ian Everard is praised even by his competitors as one of the most honest and level-headed bullion dealers in the United States. They have some great prices. You can see some of them displayed right now on screen. Take advantage of these specials today by reaching out to Ian at 307-264-9441 or by email at ian@arcsgo.com. Make sure to tell him, of course, that Commodity Culture sent you. And now, back to the interview. Oh, absolutely. Now, what do you make of these peace negotiations? I mean, we were talking about this last time I had you on the show. They're still going on, or so-called, whatever you want to call them, meetings. I don't think it's official peace negotiations. You got Jared Kushner involved, who's doesn't know anything about international diplomacy. You've got, this 29-point peace plan drafted up by the U.S. Russia said maybe we can work with some of it. EU collectively loses their minds. Now the EU, we made our own plan, and it's all these plans that Russia would never, ever concede to. And now here we are again. We're just on repeat. Zelensky was at Mar-a-Lago again. President Trump claims he had a great phone call with Putin again. These are things that it's like we're living in Groundhog Day. What's going on here, Martin?
I think basically, look, I was called in and asked to write a peace plan. I was surprised. All right. And the fact that I was even called in shows that I think the big problem in the Trump administration is that he's been surrounded by neocons. You take Rubio, who I have had contact with, all right? Before he joined Trump, he submitted a bill into the Senate to prevent the president from ever exiting NATO without congressional approval. Bessent, the Secretary of Treasury, he was Soros's number one man. He's actually the brains behind Soros. He was the one that basically sold Soros on the British pound trade. He's not publicly advocating endless war, but he doesn't really come out advocating peace. So when I was called in, I was really surprised because they know where I stand. But I was asked not just to write a plan. I was asked, could I use my back channels with Russia? I said, you want me to do that? They said, yes. So I believe I got the plan that I produced for them, as I was asked to do a plan that I thought Putin would accept. So I did. I laid it all out, how we even got to this place. And I believe I got it on Putin's desk, and about 2 days later, Lavrov came out and said, Russia's willing to guarantee we are not interested in going into NATO. Of course, NATO comes out and says, oh, they're lying. But there's nothing in Europe for Russia, at this. Europe's got to get its energy from Russia. It's a black hole, basically. There's nothing there of value for conquest. All right. When Japan went into Manchuria, it was for assets. It was for, energy, stuff like that. I mean, as I've said before, even Alexander the Great, he couldn't say to the men, "Oh, let's go take out this country. What are we going to get?" "Oh, nothing. I just want to take them out." They would have said, "You're on your own." War's got to be profitable. I mean, just look at Venezuela. Venezuela has the largest oil reserves, even more than Saudi Arabia. You really think that Trump would be interested in Bangladesh or Guatemala if there's no profit to be made? Honestly, I would be surprised if every energy company wasn't greasing every possible palm to get a hold of Venezuela. Russian energy companies are leaving. The American ones want to go in. So, I mean, there's a profit to be made from this. And geopolitically, Venezuela's number one client was China. And I can tell you, being in these meetings, I was surprised, but they did agree with me. And three things have happened since I've done that report. But Representative Massey has introduced a bill to exit NATO. When I said, you know my position, we got to get out of NATO before they do a false flag, they actually said to me, "We know you're correct." All right. They also said that I was correct. We would not be at war with Russia. They said we will be at war with China. All right. And third, I warned that it's the EU, which is your real enemy, and they will stab you in the back because economically they are collapsing. And when any government is in that position, they will do whatever it takes to retain power. And that's what this war is about. All right. You had, it's documented, you had Merkel actually publicly admit, I was surprised that she did, that they signed the Minsk agreement and had no intention of ever honoring that peace agreement. So that shows you, and she even said we were only buying time for Ukraine to build an army. That is a statement showing that Europe wanted this war. Period. All right. It's not can't conspiracy theory. This is all documented. It's in the press. All right. So, I mean, I think another reason I was called in is because when they were forming the euro, I was called in. And I said, okay, fine, this is how we create a currency. And I've said before, Kohl wouldn't allow that Germany to, the German people to vote because he admitted before he died he would have lost 7-3. So there was no consolidation of the debt. And I said, this is going to fail. And I was told back then in 98, we just have to get the euro in, create the bureaucracy. We'll worry about the debt later. I can tell you what's going on now. You take Italy, for example, is on the cusp. I've received phone calls on, okay, because they know we're reaching the point where you get a debt crisis. And one country goes down and it sets off a contagion for all of them because there is no federal debt. What's going on is that the EU is now contemplating a response to that. And that would be to jettison Southern Europe from the EU. And then the EU would be reorganized, which is the northern states. And that's why Stammer's got flags out there for the EU in front of 10 Downing Street. What's going on behind the scenes is that he wants to rejoin the EU. This is just a giant mess. It really is. And nobody gives two shits about the people. This is all about retaining power.
Well, let me ask you this when it comes to the EU, because this is a topic that's come up a few times on this show already. Would love to get your take. Is this whole collapse of the EU in terms of its economy? We see Germany deindustrializing, France is running into issues. I mean, so many of these countries are having problems economically. Is the whole push for war with Russia coming out of the leadership? You got Merz up there talking about, well, we hope enough people volunteer, but if not, we'll have to think about mandatory conscription. I mean, Poland's been talking about mandatory conscription. Is part of this whole thing a way to distract from the issues at home by being able to tell people, actually, the reason there's all these problems is because Russia's about to attack us and we're in a wartime economy? Is that part of the plan? Do you think they actually, because you've talked before that you think they could actually send troops. Do you at this point believe that's still possible, or do you, and obviously we know there are NATO boots on the ground in Ukraine,
Yes,
already, but in terms of a full scale, actually, putting a military force into there, and getting the people behind it, is that something you see happening, or do you see it more as a distraction for the populace to kind of get their mind on the fact that the reason their standard of living is collapsing is because of Putin?
Yeah, no, look, the war is a distraction, because if they don't get a war going, then the people are going to rise up with their pitchforks and go after the parliaments. And the problem here is that there's just, they can't solve it without serious reform, and that reform means they have to lose power. Look, you cannot have social justice, all right, in their view, materially, and individual liberty and economic efficiency. The three of them are incompatible. You can't have social justice and even simultaneously with individual freedom. I mean, this is what they're doing, is following basically the USSR. And we all know what happened then. I mean, eventually it just absolutely collapsed. The only thing that prevented a major crisis was that, I haven't said that publicly, but, I've gotten a few emails about it, about Gorbachev. All right. Gorbachev actually was more friends with Margaret Thatcher. And Thatcher had spoken at our conference and understood cycles, I think, instinctively. And I believe that was transferred to Gorbachev. Gorbachev knew that the Soviet Union cyclically was going to collapse. I did have some contact. All right. It was Gorbachev that resurrected Kondratiev. And there was even a ceremony there. I couldn't make it, but I did send a representative. So he refused to send troops in to defend the Soviet Union, as we saw in Tiananmen Square. All right. Because he understood this was the end for the USSR, cyclically. Okay. He let it go. He then tried to create a unified republic type thing, like the United States, which didn't work. But he at least understood that USSR's time was up. And um, in part, that I ended up kind of like in the middle of a lot of that stuff, but um, there was it turned out the son of the um, leader of the Democratic Party in Russia was working for our office in London. And when they assassinated her, the hardliners were saying, "Oh, she's a puppet of a Western financier," which was supposed to be me, which was simply not true. Um, but it's and they made the connection simply because her son worked for our company. That was basically it. But so I'm intimately aware of what everything took place, who did what to whom and when. But this is the fate of the EU. It's the same as the USSR, where Gorbachev understood that and didn't call out the tanks against the people. Now, this is part of, I guess, why I was also called in, because they know I actually have real experience in these things with that. And perhaps I scared them out of their wits. But I said, when Khrushchev had to back down in '62, there was a coup. All right, Brezhnev took over, and that gave us the Cold War. Then, when Gorbachev, there was, I did a book, The Plot to Seize Russia. It's on Amazon, and you'll see, like, page 3. I got all the declassified documents from the Clinton administration. And most people don't realize, but Russia was invited to join NATO. And so their hardliners staged a coup against him when he was on vacation. So there was this second coup. That's when Yeltsin stood on the tank and said, "Don't fire on your own people" in '91. They didn't. And that's what people have to understand. A successful revolution or coup or whatever you want to call it is dependent upon the military. In '91, the military stood down, so the coup failed. Yeltsin becomes president. All right. If they had fired on the people, then okay, fine, you might be able to retain power for a little bit, but eventually it's going to collapse. The coup against Gorbachev was because from their perspective, they thought he would join NATO. And to them, you got to put their hat on and look at it from their perspective. To them, that would be surrendering to the American neocons. All right, so that's why they staged the coup against Gorbachev. So I warned them in these meetings. I said, if you think you can really embarrass Putin, you're going to have a real problem. Because then you're going to get coup number 3. And this time you're going to get the hardliners in there, and they will push the button. So, this is what we're looking at. Europe is in dire straits. Economically, you can look at, compare the chart of quarterly GDP growth of Europe compared to the United States. It's a tiny fraction.
Well, I want to just interject for a moment here, because it seems like the Trump administration would certainly agree with you. They released their national security strategy. I don't know if it was leaked in advance. I forget exactly, but they did talk about, I'm going to read a quote here from the BBC. I hate quoting the BBC, but I'm going to do it because it's the first article that came up. It says, U.S. President Donald Trump's administration has warned that Europe faces civilizational erasure and questioned whether certain nations can remain reliable allies in a new strategy document that puts a focus on the content. Now, this is in addition to them sanctioning some members of the EU leadership over policing of the internet in the name of so-called hate speech. I'm going to read another quote from Politico. It says, the Trump administration says it is barring former European Commissioner Thierry Breton and 4 other European nationals involved in curbing hate speech from U.S. soil as part of a sanctions package targeting what it describes as digital censorship. What are your thoughts on these developments? Because it does seem like the EU and the U.S. administration are getting farther and farther apart, both when it comes to the Russia-Ukraine conflict and on the free speech issue as well.
Yes, you just had also Vice President Vance say that the fact that the EU and France, that the UK and France have nuclear weapons is a quote unquote threat to U.S. national security. Why? Because they can't be trusted. All right. I'll probably get blamed for saying the EU was the enemy, but they blame me for everything else. So what's the difference? I guess. Look, this is it. That's probably another reason why I was called in, because I look at this from an economic standpoint. Is everybody acts out of their own self-interest. All right, so it's not what you think, it's what they think. And if you don't understand, I think even Sun Tzu said that, if you don't understand your enemy, then you're going to lose. And that's what basically this is about. You must, it's not that you're agreeing with them or apologizing for them. You have to look at it. This is what they think, right, wrong, or indifferent. Doesn't matter. All right. But they will act according to that thought. And this is what's going on with the EU. They know they're in trouble. But instead of trying to address it, they're getting desperate, with the shutting down free speech, all of this stuff. The fact they're even doing that shows you that they are desperate. This is what Lenin did. All right. Any sort of government immediately tries to shut down. Any authoritarian government shuts down any opposition. Zelensky has done that in Ukraine. All right. One of my sources was Lira. He was an American journalist over there. He's the one that actually exposed the fact that Zelensky was on coke. And he had him arrested. He was tortured, kept in prison. And then when Trump won the election, he had him killed. Why? Because he was an American. Biden sat there and says, oh, okay, fine. Whatever you want to do, we're with you. All right. So Biden remained silent. Even Lear's family wrote, no response. All right. So when Trump won the election, they killed him. Oh, he had pneumonia. How about that? So you didn't, even if that's true, so it reflects that you didn't take care of him. And so they basically killed him because Trump then would have demanded an American be returned. And then if he had been released, everybody would have known the truth about Zelensky. It would have been on the front pages of every newspaper. They couldn't have denied that. All right. But look, this is, any dictatorship that immediately shuts down the press, you know where you're going. And that's what the EU is doing. I mean, in UK, you got, hate speech. Locking a guy up for saying, do you speak English? Oh, that's discrimination. Another guy, 22 months in jail, I think it was, for saying he was tired of his money going to illegal, immigrants who rape our children. Oh, 22 months. That's hate speech. Anything, you can say anything is hate speech at this point. And the hate speech is basically government hating the people, really. That's what the hell is going on here. Look, I think you're probably going to see war escalate in 26, maybe as soon as April or by June. But I do not see any sort of a lasting peace. That's not the issue here. And the issue is not to push Putin out of Ukraine. I mean, this is all like the guy on the street with the 3 shells, distracting you. The object here is, look, you've even had Kalis come out and say Russia's too big and needs to be broken up. They want the assets. They do this. They get to keep the $300 billion in cash they've already stolen, and at least $50 billion of that, they pretend it's Russian assets. It's private Russian individuals. All right. It's not just bank reserves of the government. You've had Czechoslovakia, Switzerland confiscated $8 billion. Had nothing to do with Putin. Oh, you just knew Putin. That's good enough. We can steal all your money. Switzerland has surrendered its neutrality. So is Sweden. In World War II, both were neutral. No more. Sweden joined NATO. So I don't see any safe haven left in Europe, per se. At least before it was Portugal, Switzerland, and Sweden that were neutral in World War II. I don't see anybody being neutral right now.
Well, your computer program Socrates has predicted international war would start to get aggressive in 2023 and escalate into 2026. Certainly, we've seen that play out. You mentioned you see it potentially accelerating. Your computer said that in 2026 there would be a panic cycle. Could you break down what panic cycle means here and what some of the potential scenarios could be?
Panic cycles are usually periods of very high volatility. We have that on a yearly level on our war models, which is extremely unusual. All right. But we also have it on the euro itself. So it's clearly the computer's been targeting this, for some time. You can even look, Google on our site, back in 2013. I said it's going to be Ukraine. That's where it's going to start, a year before their revolution in 2014. The computer's been pretty objective and damn good at forecasting this stuff. Anytime I try to, go against it, I'm the one that loses. I don't want to see this stuff, but, it's, I think, my job is just basically to say, look, this is what the computer says. And anytime I've tried to disagree with it, I'm the one that's always wrong. So, this is being driven by economics. Just as the Soviet Union fell and communism fell in China, it's simply Europe's turn. Socialism does not work. As I said, you cannot have social justice and individual liberty at the same time. No less economic efficiency, But that's what broke the back of communism. I was invited by the Central Bank of China back in '97. I went because I wanted to see the Great Wall. I thought I'd have to listen to a bunch of bureaucrats. And And then they took me to a facility where there were hundreds of people downloading everything from the internet. And they took me into a room and asked me questions I felt like I was teaching grade school. They were monitoring 249 varieties of tea. And they said, why is this tea selling for like $1 here and $5 there? And I said, well, where's it come from? I said, well, here. I said, well, first you have transportation costs. And it was like, oh, yeah, okay. And so I had a front row seat to understand how and why communism collapsed. Because that tea, if it was $1 here, it had to be $1 over there, even if it cost you $10 to get there. All right. And I'm answering questions like, well, why would somebody buy this tea versus that tea? I said, because maybe they might like it more. Oh, okay. I mean, so I was right there on the ground. I saw it trying to explain how to become capitalist, etc. It was very fascinating to observe this. This is our time. As simple as that. It's this socialistic idea, oh, we're all social justice. You have to earn the same as me. I might be a trash guy, but you're a brain surgeon, but that's not fair. You get more than me, really, it just, it doesn't work. It has never worked. All right. And honestly, I've studied ancient history, and you can see, one of the 10 commandments is thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's goods. Okay. That's what this is about. Jealousy of somebody else has got more than you. But it goes back even, thousands of years before that. It's in the Sumerian codes, etc. And, Marx was impressed because Sparta was one of the earliest communist states, and that's what They never even issued coins. Everybody was they went after Athens because Athens was the decadent democracy and art and stuff like this, and you can see that today. Oh, he's got more than me. That's not fair. This is a human jealousy trait or whatever you want to call it, but it's been around for thousands of years. This is not something new.
I want to get your thoughts on how gold and silver are playing a role in a lot of these issues that you've brought up so far. Because obviously we've seen both metals have a tremendous year, especially silver up over 140%, I believe, so far year to date. Are they sending us a warning, the precious metals, about what's happening to the global order when it comes to the geopolitical order, when it comes to the monetary system, the financial system? Is this something we should be worried about if we continue to see gold and silver climb dramatically in 2026?
Look, with how I even came to understand the computer forecasting war. Because when I wrote the code and, the computer's monitoring everything in the world and coming, I did not design it with the idea that it would forecast war. We started really with currency. And I was called in by the Central Bank of Lebanon back in the mid 80s. And they asked me if we could do a model in the Lebanese pound. I said, fine. They sent over the data. They found some ledger back to mid 19th century in their basement or something. We put it in, and what came out, it said, I thought there was something wrong. It said your country's going to fall apart in 8 days. So I said, look, there's got to be something wrong with this data. And very calmly, they said to me, well, what currency does it recommend? I said, Swiss franc. And I was very kind of surprised. And 8 days later, the Civil War began. So eventually, I came to understand they knew what was happening. They only came to me for the timing. And we had another client. He was one of the biggest shippers in the Gulf. And he calls and he says, what do you think gold's going to do tomorrow? Because Iraq's going to start attacking shipping in the Gulf. I see you telling me that a war is going to start tomorrow? They say, oh, yeah. So by the time we got to, Russia in the late 90s there, I stood up in London and I said, look, the computer's saying Russia's going to collapse, and I give it a little more than 30 days. And I didn't realize at the time that the London Financial Times had snuck in the back of the room. And they put it on the front page. Armstrong says Russia's going to collapse and we're going to have nukes going around or whatever. That was the long-term capital management crisis and all that. So the computer has taught me something invaluable. And even the SEC ended up using our stuff after 9/11. Somebody always knows. All right. And what the computer's picking up, as it did on Russia, all right, it showed 100 billion going in, but 150 billion coming out. All right. So the rise in gold and silver is the hallmark of people who know what is going on behind the curtain. And what are they doing? They've been buying gold and silver because they know what's coming down. Okay. So that's why you see the sharp rise, etc. Silver starting to rise more against gold because most likely, and I have written about this, that you look at Europe and what they did for World War I and II. World War I, they shut down all the European stock markets. All right. They put in capital controls on gold. So the Europeans were able to buy gold stocks in the United States, but not gold. All right. So I think you see a lot, people have shifted to some degree to silver, but they also shut down silver. One to pay attention to is platinum. Platinum has all of a sudden started to rise very sharply. All right. It used to be worth more than gold. And all of a sudden you see a lot of money starting to go into platinum. So I believe this is some of the people that behind the curtain understand what I'm saying about capital controls. That to the best of my knowledge, and I've tracked everything I possibly can, I never saw any capital controls restrict platinum. Gold, silver, yes. This is also why Bitcoin has done well. All right, is that it's a money laundering instrument. It got off the ground with a lot of volume, but it was all coming out of China. Why? Because the Chinese figured they could buy it there and sell it in New York and got the money out. It didn't go through a central bank. No wire. Canadians have been doing it. Europeans that I know have been using it. All right. It's not a store of wealth. It's not going to replace gold. And it's not going to replace the dollar. All right. It's a money laundering instrument. That said, Um, Europe will probably also include capital controls on Bitcoin. They're not stupid. You know, I believe what they will probably do, just looking at what they've done before, they will probably cancel the paper currencies, force you into an electronic digital currency that they're pushing ASAP. And once they do that, they'll have 100% control of your bank accounts. So you won't be able to wire anything to New York or Uruguay or something like that, whatever. You'll be stuck. And that's always the number one objective in war, is to prevent capital outflow. And, they wage economic war as part of this. American Revolution, Britain was counterfeiting American paper currency. Napoleon counterfeited British currency. Germans were counterfeiting the British currency during World War II. This is standard operating procedure, right? This is why you see Europe trying its best to put sanctions, stop Russia, attack their fleets, their shadow fleets, etc. The idea is that you cut off their ability to fund the war. So this has been part of the strategy from, like I said, even from the American Revolution. And you can buy some of those counterfeit, bills online. So I would suspect that they will put some sort of capital controls, maybe include silver initially, is based upon its recent sharp rise. That is clearly, to me, somebody that says they know what's coming. So I see the resistance in silver. We had it at 78 to about 80. Once you get through that, we have some more at the 89 level up to the mid 90s. You got to get through that. Once it gets through 100 will be a psychological resistance level. And so we have, I think, pretty solid resistance at around 104. So sometimes you just briefly get above it or below one of these psychological numbers, and that sparks selling or buying depending on which direction you're going. So I would be mindful of that, and I think you're looking at that even coming as early as January. So I don't think we're too far away from that. And we have panic cycles starting in February, but clearly Europe is on the ropes, and I don't blame Putin for not wanting to stop with a ceasefire, because Europe's not trustworthy. All they're going to do is rearm it. That's all they're going to do. And unfortunately, I just don't see any lasting peace. The computer does not project that. So I think any peace deal that they try to sneak in would be justifying sending in NATO troops to man the border, and then say, oh, he shot me in the foot, so therefore that's World War III,
Well, Martin, this has been a tremendous conversation. As always, so many insights shared. Tell us about the Socrates platform, where people can access that, as well as Armstrong Economics.
Socrates is writing reports all by itself. There's no human interaction with it. and it's writing over 1,000 reports on stocks and commodities everywhere around the world. So we're actually not blocked in China. We even have offices there. So everybody knows it's not a, they don't have to worry about it on page 3, by the way, overthrow your government, and so it's the only really artificial intelligence system that has over a 40-year track record. So you can go to armstrongeconomics.com and you can get to it from there. We try to keep it, we have, one access level that's like $15 a month. We try to keep it very minimal because we're more interested in trying to help society rather than anything else. We don't sell advertising. And to also explain, they have a law that says if you accept any money from a government, you must register as a government agent. All right. So because we're on every continent and I have to comply with laws of absolutely every country around the world, what we do is we don't even sell advertising. We do not accept any money from any government, period, including the United States. And fortunately, I don't need the money anyhow, but that has ended up putting me in a very unique position in the sense that we have no conflict of interest. So that's why we get called in by governments around the world. Everybody knows they don't have to worry about, we just say what the truth is. This is it. Here's the computer. And it's not my personal opinion.
Well, I'm going to put links in the description below to Armstrong Economics, the Socrates platform, as well as your account on X. I recommend people follow you there. You're quite active and put out a lot of good info. Thank you once again, Martin. As always, great conversation, and thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you. Take care over there, and see you again.
Thank you for joining us today. Our sponsor, ARC Silver Gold Osmium, has some great prices on gold and silver bullion products. You can see them on your screen right now. These are subject to change, and well supplies last, so reach out to owner Ian Everard today at 307-264-9441 or by email at ian@arcsgo.com, and make sure to tell him that Commodity Culture sent you. And of course, pick up your Stack Silver, not Fiat t-shirt. Make a statement about sound money backed by a 100% quality guarantee. Use the link in the description, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Commodity Culture is a series on commodities and natural resources. If you would like to see more, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification so you're always up to date with the latest episodes.